My name is Edward Mbeche, your host, founder and CEO of Helen Super App. And actually, probably I should apologize for yesterday. We were supposed to go live yesterday, and we had some technical difficulty. My internet just cut off. With the Xfinity, they branded their name from Comcast to Xfinity, but it's like the service is like, I don't know what's going on. I gotta try to switch maybe to Verizon. But today I have an awesome guest. Her name is Molly I'm gonna hopefully I don't mess up the last name. Ruland.
And there you
Who's
go.
a Yeah, right. I got it right.
That's it. Yeah.
All right. She's the founder and CEO of Heartcast Media. We're gonna get some awesome conversation, and just I'm gonna ask a lot of good questions, and hopefully just bring kind of value to the listener. Molly, how are you?
I'm excellent. How are you today?
Good, good, good. Welcome to the headliners. Did I say the last name okay?
Yes, it was fantastic.
Okay. So it's like I have a problem with like pronunciation for the R and the L. So I'm gonna be like
Well,
Roland.
that makes two of us because the M and the B, that's not, that's a little difficult too. So we're on the same page.
Yeah. Some people always think like my last name is like there's something is missing there. It's like, are you sure there's not a C there? I'm like, no, there's no C.
Yeah, for
Yeah.
sure.
Yeah. Thank you so much again for taking the time to join me. I know yesterday we had some technical difficulty and you had to wait for like 15 minutes just for me to fix my problem.
Well,
But
that's nothing in the grand scheme of things. It could have been an hour. It was only
that,
15 minutes. So
yeah,
perspective is everything.
that's awesome. So let's do this. Maybe just kind of give like a little bit history for people to get to know who's Molly. Can you take me back like to where you grew up, like and some good childhood memory and stuff like that high school, college, being a
Oh man.
cheerleader, were you cheerleader or whatever?
Oh man, no, I was not a cheerleader. Well, I was born at Bethesda Naval. My dad's a two-time Vietnam vet, so I was born in a military hospital. My family moved around a lot, but I'm the youngest of four, so I lived in the same house my whole life in Falls Church. So I walked to elementary school, I walked to my high school. I had a very like Mayberry experience, but 4 miles from DC. So it was kind of a unique childhood for sure. Growing up on the bike trail, spent a lot of time outside. I went to George Mason High School, and then I went to George Mason University for all about 5 months. So then I dropped out. I was painfully shy, and my roommate never showed up, and so I never went to any of my classes. I had basically failed out of college by the third week. And
Wow.
so felt like I was living a lie, and I had really let my family down. And so I bought a one-way ticket to Boston on December 3rd, 1993. No, 1994. And I took an overnight train to Boston, and I had a yellow pages somehow from I don't even know how I got the yellow pages, but I took this train to Boston, and I had on 3 winter coats and a suitcase, and I had like $200, and I managed to get myself a job as a live-in nanny. I didn't get kidnapped or disappear. Mind you, this is 1994. No cell phones, no pagers. You know what I mean? It's a whole different. Pagers were just about to come out, but like there was no. I
Yeah.
was on another planet. My parents thought I was in the dorm in Fairfax, Virginia, and I'm like just
Wow.
standing on the train station platform in Boston. I decided to move there because of the show Cheers. I was young. And I
You're not,
moved there, and
you're not
I
gonna
got a
judge you.
yeah. I mean, you're young. Your worldview is very, very small, especially
Yeah.
growing up in such a small town. And yeah, so I got a job as a live-in nanny, and they wanted to hire me, but they said you got to call your parents. And so I called my mom, crying hysterically, and she's like, "Where are you?" I'm like, "I'm fine, but I'm not coming home, and I'm sorry." But college was not for me. It didn't make sense.
Yeah.
And so I never went back home, and I just started working really hard. I got into the mortgage business at age 19. I bought a house at age 23. I sold it at age 26 without a realtor, sold it myself,
Wow.
did everything. I loved the industry. I loved the problem solving. I was in subprime lending at the very beginning of it when it was actually good and it was actually helping people with alternative income, and it was very creative financing, and it got a lot of people into homes that, previously wouldn't have been able to qualify. And I felt really good about that work. And I was an excellent loan processor. I was closing like 30 deals a month. I mean, I had like, whiteboards and color coded folders, and I was like scanning and typing loan submission documents when that was like more or less sorcery. You know what I mean? Like, this is the day and age, it's 1995, right? Like, you're still copying loan packages, and, I mean, it was not technology forward at that time. So I really thrived in that industry, but then I just, I just wanted out, when the recession was about to hit, even a few years before that, there was signals in the industry. There was massive fraud, and from top to bottom, it was the underwriters and the loan officers. It was in every single group of people. And even as a young adult, I was like, this doesn't feel okay. Like, my boss had 10 phone lines in his garage to do fake employment of verifications of employment, right? And they were like proud of this. And so I knew, like, this is not, there's no integrity in this. You know what I mean? I'd rather flip burgers at McDonald's than do this. And the program started to change, and they were doing like 125% real refinances. 125, they'll give you 125% of the value of your home at like 26%. And I was like, I got to get out of this. Is not how I want to spend my life. And so I started throwing parties and managing artists, and, started doing that in around 2001. And eventually phased out of real estate finance and focused solely on the multimedia company. So I spent the last 21 years, doing a ton of marketing, branding, design, strategy, grassroots marketing, high-level marketing, production, audio, video, recording studios, mastering music, recording bands, live shows, management, booking, all of that. And I did that in DC, and it was just building, fostering community through art, music, and culture, right? And so I was just the human behind the curtain that built stages and created platforms for people to do their thing, and I really love that, but I was pouring from an empty cup for a long time. And so in 2018, I closed that company down. I had a bunch of health problems, and they thought I had cancer, and I was kind of relieved. And so I closed that company down. And they told me I didn't have cancer. And so I thought, well, shit, I better build a life that I want to live, because I'm still here and I'm not going anywhere. And so I recondoed my life and my business, and I stopped doing everything that didn't bring me joy. I dialed in on what did. I took my intellectual property, my relationships, and my equipment, formed a new company, and targeted creating digital content that generates revenue and creates strategic relationships for businesses, brands, nonprofits, founders, CEOs, startups, things like that. Taking all of this information that I have from doing it for 21 years on how to build audiences, how to create content, how to use language that makes sense, how to constantly stay in touch with the platforms and what's going on. And I, took that to businesses and brands and people with bigger budgets, so that I could enjoy more of the strategy part and less of the implementation. And so that's kind of the story of Heartcast Media, and me in a nutshell.
Okay. And and actually, I was thinking too. Like, I was like, wow, that's so amazing. So, like, let's say the college experience, right? So where you are like either when you say you are shy or scared, where you like they got you to school and you're like, no, I'm not going in class. Where you just, I don't know, maybe you didn't vibe with your roommate or whatever it is. You say your roommate did not show up, right?
Yeah, so I was in this room and my roommate never showed up, and that was really the thing for me. I was so shy. Like, I lost 30 pounds because I was too embarrassed to go to the dorm and eat by myself. It's just a very, which now I'll go anywhere. I'm like, shit, I'll go to the Ritz and be like, bring me, alone. I don't care. I'm going to have a great meal. Totally. I had a job that changed that experience. But at the time, I was very young and very sheltered and very nervous. And, I went to a very small elementary school that was Catholic, and I had the same teacher for most of my subjects and like 30 other kids. And then the high school I went to I graduated with 93 other kids. very small. So I got to
Yeah.
George Mason, which is also a small university in comparison, but 20,000, there'd be like 1,000 people in one class.
Yeah.
I didn't know I didn't know what to do with that. And so I just didn't go. And then, by the third week I had failed out. It was a wrap. You know what I mean? Now I was just living with this lie
Yeah.
for 5 months,
This,
trying to
this,
figure out.
yeah, it's kind of weird also, like with the idea of like where like you're so nervous to go in class, like where, but at the same time, it's like you found something and you're like, I'm going to Boston. You're like, "Ooh, you should be more nerve wracking. Like I can't go to, yeah, it's
You
like,
you would think, yeah, like everything I own on my back, going alone with the one-way ticket, like, yeah, no, I mean that's way sketchier than like showing up to class. But
yeah, no, it's like class is more safer than this other one is like way like yeah. So I guess it's just. But would you say so by 23 you buy your own house, right?
yeah.
And would you say, because so to look back, by meaning, would you have finished college by 22 or 20?
For sure. And it was an interesting juxtaposition because all my friends went to college. So did I. I didn't last more than 6 months and then went and lived my life, and I'm an October kid. So I was 17 when I graduated and 18 and no, I was 17 when I moved out, because we started college. And so I turned 18 in college and 2 months later then got on this train to Boston. Right. So I was, just super, super young.
Yeah, yeah.
I'm sorry. What was the question? I got so sidetracked. These
No,
memories are like
I
flooding
was
back.
trying to figure if you stayed in college, you would
Oh,
graduate at 22, something
I
like
would
that.
have graduated by 20. And it was interesting because I had all this shame and guilt from like failing out of college and letting my parents down. I'm the youngest of four. They were like, "You're going to be the one, right? You're going to be the one." And I was like, "No, I'm not prepared for this." And so I had
Yeah,
all this shame and guilt. And then all my friends started to graduate from college and they were moving back in with their parents.
yeah,
And
yeah,
I was like, had a good job and had a cool apartment and was like had my own car and then bought a house at 23 and they're all like still living with their parents 2 years after graduation. So it taught me a lot, honestly. That's like everything isn't always what it seems,
yeah, yeah,
and let's face it, if you got a college degree in 1993, you had two options: sociology or communications,
yeah, yeah.
both of which would be entirely useless today. Entirely, you know?
But you see though, like that's what I was trying to piggyback. Where it's like sometime college it might work for someone, whatever. Maybe it depends. Maybe with a different discipline, but for you also here at 23, it's like where you experience this lifespan of like 2-3 years, but you're already in the real world. Even your parents who looked at you like you're gonna fail, whatever. Now you have a house. They're like, whoa. And probably out of your sibling, probably you like, were you the only one with a house? Was your other sibling with houses?
They had houses, but there's an age difference there, like my brothers were married before I. No, I don't know. That's a good question. I don't
But
know.
but
I didn't
but
think about it.
they're gonna be like, she's 23, she got a house, like like because a house is normally like even like that time too. You'll think like at a house, you'd be like, oh, you have to be like in your 30. Then you'd be like, I'm gonna buy a house. But now it's like at 23, it's like you have this is like you're already being it's like almost being successful in life, you will say that, right? Because as a kid with the house, everything looked like okay, she got a house, she's successful.
Well,
kind
you
of
know what it was? I had spent like 4 years in real estate at that point, and so I had read so many credit reports. I had read tax reports. I had,
yeah,
when you're a loan processor, you're the one contacting the client all the time. You're the one reaching out, hey, saying, I noticed you have an overdraft in your September statement. Can you send me October? And say, like, you are all up in their business and you are
yeah,
the main contact with the borrower. And a lot of time these borrowers are like, important people who make a lot of money. I'm like, I need your Schedule C from your tax return. At 19 years old, like I learned things, right? I
yeah,
learned so much about life and money and how it's kind of all bullshit and it's all just numbers on a page. And I really learned a lot from that experience. And I was getting so many other people houses that I thought, well, hell, why don't I get myself a house? And so that's what I did. I wrote my own loan and you know what I mean? I got it approved and the lenders knew who I was and I got an FHA loan and, But I learned a lot in that experience because when everybody else was going out and partying, I was like, I don't have any money because I have to fix my gutters.
Yeah.
Which really sucked at 24, you know?
Yeah, I
Yeah.
know. Since I kind of missed out that side of, but after that though, you got to travel, you got to have fun, and did you get a chance to travel after? Like, let's say okay, you're talking about the One Love Massive, right? Is that the events, managing and all kind of stuff, right? That's the company you're talking about.
Yeah, so in the time that I left college, right, and like moved, I got a job in Boston for a year, and then I got a job as a hotel analyst. My cousin was doing this work, and it's basically a secret shopper, but for hotels, resorts, and casinos.
Mhm.
So, like, I think I was like 18, maybe 19. Yeah,
Mhm.
it's so crazy thinking about this stuff because I haven't thought about it in years. I got this job as a hotel analyst. So I traveled all over the United States and the Caribbean, and I stayed in hotels and I rated them like a secret shopper, but it was hotels, resorts, and casinos.
Mhm.
And so what it did was it forced me to now eat in public alone, go to the bar alone. Like I had to do this for my job because then I was writing reports. And so I ended up traveling all over the Caribbean and Puerto Rico and the United States and in some nice places and some like Jackpot, Nevada. I'm sure you've never been because no
No.
one's ever been there. You know,
Yeah.
they have a postcard that's Jackpot at night, and it's like two little lights because there's nothing there. It's like a real postcard. So like, I had this job, and it changed my world because I was the person who failed out of college and lost, you know, an alarming amount of weight because I couldn't eat in public. And then now I had this job where I had to go sit in restaurants. And I quickly learned that if you're sitting at a bar at 5 p.m. on a Tuesday, whoever's sitting next to you got a story. And so you better talk to them. And that changed my worldview because then I learned that wherever you go, you have a new friend waiting next to you. So I look people in the eye, I say, good morning, good afternoon. I'm the person that bullshits with people online. You know what I mean? I'm hugging people on my way out. People are like, how did you make friends with the DMV? I'm like, I don't know. But it was that job. It really changed things. And so, you know, for me, it made a lot of sense at 23. I had already traveled quite a bit. I had seen a lot, and I was kind of ready to like chill out a little bit and create some roots, you know, here.
Yeah. So like, because now you did you apart from traveling, you're in Boston now. You lived in Boston. When did you end up? Did you end up moving to another place, another state, or did you end up just moving back to the DC area? This Virginia Falls Church, you say, right? Fairfax Falls.
Yeah, I grew up in Falls Church, but I lived all over. I lived in Boston as a nanny. I spent some summers in New York. I lived in California for a little bit. I lived in Maryland, then I lived in Virginia, then I lived in DC. So I moved around quite a bit after that. You know, I had the house for 3 years. I sold it. I made 100,000, and I moved to California, like typical, you know,
Yeah.
idiot money. I was like, I'm moving to California. See ya.
Yeah.
Lived on an apartment where I could see like this much of the ocean through like some
Yeah.
buildings,
Yeah.
you know, ocean views. Though that was a
You're
big
like,
deal.
I miss Boston. You're like, yeah.
Yeah, this is
Yeah.
paradise. So, and then from there, you know, I lived in California for a few years, and then I came back, and then that's when I really, I've been here ever since, and moved into DC proper, and really like set my roots in DC, and grew One Love massive, you know, to you know 160 artists in our collective, and recorded 85 bands in a year, and I mean we were the engine behind a lot of stuff that most people don't know about, except for the people that were involved.
Yeah.
It was not a profitable company, but it was a effective company. We did a lot of amazing things for locals in DC,
Yeah.
but it was not a sustainable business.
So by that time, when you got the cancer scare, and you're like, okay, now I gotta get out of this, and by the time you kind of so you decided, okay, let me form this Heartcast media. So were you thinking of other stuff you wanted to do, or were you like, okay, I'm trying to figure what I want to do, or it just popped up, you're like, okay, this is what I'm gonna do?
It was actually a really transformative conversation between me and a friend, Hiba Sadiq, and we were chatting, and she just kind of helped me see like what it was I was enjoying and not. And we actually decided to form Heartcast Media together. But the partnership didn't last. It didn't last for more than like 2 months, because I was still really not healed and not in a position to be a good business partner, and it's a lot of work.
Yeah.
And a lot of people think they want to be an entrepreneur and have a startup, and then you're like, but you got to work 80 hours a week, and they're like, wait, what?
Yeah.
I don't want to.
Yeah.
Like I was talking to my dad last week. He said entrepreneurship is the only job that you're willing to work 70 hours a week for yourself instead of 40 for somebody else. I said, man,
Exactly.
ain't that the
Yep.
truth, man? So. But it was mostly me. I was not in a position to be a good business partner, but she was the one with the business management and business, school experience like that, project management, that was her. I'm the media person. I'm the create the content, the man behind the curtain, the camera, the aesthetic, the vibe, the design. I was not the business person. And so when she left, I panicked, and I just committed myself to learning. And so I decided that I was going to read a book a week and focus on business development and personal development.
Yeah.
And so I've spent the last 3.5 years reading as much as I possibly can. And so I've read about 125 books in the last 3.5 years.
Wow.
And so I've taken what I felt resonated with me from each one of those books and implemented it in my business and saw results. And so I have just been on a constant path of, business development and learning and putting myself in rooms where I am the dumbest person, that seems like the right idea, and lots of self-discovery and reflection. I moved to Costa Rica. And it's very quiet here. It's very, very quiet here. And so you have a lot of time to really look back at your leadership, your interpersonal skills, relationships, whatever. There's a lot of downtime. And so it really gives you an opportunity to improve yourself and your business and how you move through the world and your relationships. So I'm definitely a bit of a different person than I was even just a few years ago.
Wow. Yeah, I was thinking you're still like in the DC area, Costa Rica. That's so awesome. Like, just beautiful. I feel like when you say Costa Rica, I'm like, oh, fresh air and everything.
Pura vida, man. Yeah. I mean,
Mhm.
I wish you could see what I'm looking at right now. I'm right on Lake Arenal. I can see a volcano. There's like rolling green hills with cows on it. It's like I live in a storybook.
Yeah,
honestly, it doesn't even make sense most of the
that's
time.
awesome. And one of those things for just maybe because I experienced a little bit like when I travel to Africa is just it's something that makes you calm, like just kind of relaxing. Your whole thing is like there's no like not anxiety, but there's no, I don't know how to say this word, but you're not stressed, kind of almost gonna say, right? So it's more like relaxing. So you start the media company where so it's like a podcast. You say it's a podcast studio, production studio, right? Which is their Heartcast Media. Can you give just a give like one of those elevator pitch? Like if someone say, hey, what is Heartcast Media?
Well, we've called ourselves a podcast production company for the last few years, but we're really a digital content agency. So we've recently kind of changed our language a little bit. But we produce digital content that creates strategic relationships and drives revenue. So that's the shortest version I can give you. So any kind of digital content, like if you have a podcast, if you want to start a podcast, if you want to go on other people's podcasts, short form video, all kinds of video production. We do like live town halls for the DC government. We're doing TikTok videos for tech startup founders and entrepreneurs and, authors, coaches, people that are trying to get in front of a lot of people. We produce audiobooks. We also build websites. And that's kind of the bulk of it. And then we do consultancy. So you can hire me and I'll come in as a consultant on your project and either work with you on the strategy or work with you throughout the project. just to make sure that like all the marks are being hit and that the strategy is there. And then we're the kind of back end implementation team. So you need a logo, we'll do that. You need templates for something, we'll make sure it matches the logo. You need a website, we'll use the same brand guide. Like we try to not be a one-stop shop because I don't think that's a great way to do it. But for us, we're masters of audio and video. And so anything that relates to that, we're great. Now, if you want to shoot a commercial or something, I'm not the one. If you're trying to create content for your business, for LinkedIn and social media and your website, I am definitely the one, you know? And so it's all about creating relationships, strategic relationships, and driving revenues. So having a clear goal. You want to sell more books? You should go on 12 podcasts. We chop that content up into 8 videos for each one of those. Now you got 126 videos to use to promote yourself for 3 months in a row and go tell the world about your book. Like have a game plan, use your assets correctly. And then if you need help, we'll even post it for you if you're having a hard time like using the assets we create for you. And so that way you can just focus on what really matters. So I had these like 3 pillars of digital content creation, and that's, you know, strategy, production, and amplification, the SPA, right? You got to have a strategy, whether you're building a website or you're creating an audiobook or starting a podcast or going on other people. You need to have a strategy. What's your point? Are you trying to get more donors for your nonprofit? Are you trying to create relationships with the people you want to do business with? That's a different trajectory. Do you want to be seen as a thought leader? That's a different type of content, right? Like really dialing, what is the strategy? What is the goal? Let's reverse engineer it. The second model is production. You should always outsource your production. If you want to do a podcast about the New York Mets and it's a side project and you're drinking beers with your buddies and you don't really care, fine, do it yourself. But if you're doing it for your business, you should outsource as much as your production as possible. And number 3 is amplification. Because the problem is a lot of times people produce their own content and then they have no gas in the tank for the amplification. They don't have any juice left to now tag the people who are on the podcast, tag the people in the content, post it 1 million times, take those 8 videos that we made for them, make sure that they're going out, make sure, you know, people run out of steam. And so we're really trying to take the production off the table for people, help them come up with a clear strategy. And then if they need help amplifying, cool. If not, we're happy to punt that over to somebody's marketing team. So we work really well as like an in-house, you know, production arm for lots of large companies who recognize that it's cheaper to hire us to produce the entire product and give it to them finished versus bumping it around to multiple departments inside their company.
Okay. So with this, this is so awesome. So with this, when you do that, like let's say a company comes to you and say, hey, we need our digital. So it's more like digital branding, right? So you would call it digital branding. Do they say, hey, we need digital branding, either it's for a product, right? Not necessarily just for a service. Like let's say Colgate coming up with a new toothpaste and say, hey, here is our new toothpaste. Do they give you what they want, or do you be like, oh, thank you for the toothpaste. Now we're gonna create and give it back to you, whatever content we gave it to you? Or do they have does the customer has to come up with the idea what you need to do with that product or the service?
It really depends. So for amplification, we only do social media for the content that we create. Like we don't do standalone social media services. So like if we produce your podcast, we can also market it for you. Or if we booked you on podcasts and made short form video, we can market it for you. And so it really kind of just depends on what people need. I love working with people from the beginning. So podcast is definitely like, you know, a big part of what we do. It's not everything, but a lot of times people have an idea for a podcast, but they haven't really flushed it out. They haven't really thought about, well, what is the end result? What is the CTA? Like, where are we sending people? What is that? What is the CTA, right? That's the whole point of getting, you know, attention arbitrage is getting in front of more people, getting more eyeballs on you. So then what, right? And then identifying the goal. Is it thought leadership? Is it client acquisition? Is it client retention? Like what you have to, you know, what is the actual goal of the podcast? Then we can say, okay, who's going to do this? What is your commitment? Okay, then maybe you should do 20-minute solo podcasts, batch record them, we'll handle the rest. So we really kind of like work with people on what makes the most sense. So for like a huge company like Colgate, they might just have us design assets and send it back. Most likely they're going to have an in-house arm, right? But maybe they'll hire us to do podcast production. Like we work with the Atlantic Council, which is a huge company. They have an AV department, but they hire Heartcast Media to produce their podcast because we can get it all done and package it for them and give it back. With them, they would have to take, the video to one department, and then the copywriting would go to another department, and then it would get really cumbersome and really expensive for them. So they recognize that it makes more sense to bring us in because we've got 11 employees, we've got an assembly line going. So when you work with us, the difference is you're getting my 22 years now of branding, marketing, grassroots, like getting stuff, like actually doing it, not taking courses and getting certified, but actually doing it. And so high level strategy, how to create the intention, the vibe, the aesthetic, what is that going to take, right? And then from there, it's like, okay, what does your team want to do? And what does my team want to do? And then we just create a package for them, and then we just crank it out, and their team picks up the ball, and we keep it moving. So we work really well, like as an arm for people's production.
Okay. Do you target as your clients only like large corporation, or is it like, can you work with startup, or can you work with soaring entrepreneur? Like, let's say, hey, I'm just me and two other people, kind of thing.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we have a really great plan that's like $1,500 a month for one podcast, but it also includes all of the marketing, and we create 8 different assets for that one episode. So all month long, every week, there's content going out. Check out this episode, right? So if you don't have a huge budget, but you want to do a podcast, hey, we're a great bet because you're going to get my strategy. You're going to get an hour of my time. We're going to sit down. We're going to map out what does 12 podcasts look like for your business? How would 12 podcasts generate revenue, right? We design it. Then they go into it knowing who they want to interview, why they want to interview them, and they're doing one a month, which is totally manageable. It's not ideal. You really should do 2 a month or weekly. But if you really can't handle that, if you do 1, but you're constantly putting out marketing materials, a blog post, and then a LinkedIn article, and then a social media graphic, and then a quote, right? You gotta put 10 pieces of content out for that one episode if you're going to stretch it out over the month. But that's $1,500 a month. That's excellent. When you really compare how much visibility are you going to get off of 8 pieces of content, a YouTube video, a LinkedIn article, a newsletter, a blog post, versus spending $1,500 on a LinkedIn ad. Like, what do you think is going to get more eyeballs? What do you think is going to get more attention? What do you think is going to draw your average, your ideal client in? Yeah. That's already in your network. It's going to be the $1,500 you spend on doing a podcast. Yeah. But I want people to think about doing podcasts with people they want to do business with versus telling other entrepreneurs stories all the time, right? Which is great. Like, I appreciate the opportunity to like talk about my history, my past, right? Yeah. But the idea should always be like, how is this moving you forward in your business? You know what I mean? Like, who are you interviewing and why? Why not interview people that can bring you 10 new clients for your industry next month, right? Because the idea is you want to create a relationship, right? If I sit down with you and you come on my podcast and I say, man, Edward was born here and he did this and did that, and he's most likely known for this, and his best friend even said at his wedding, right? Like you're like, yo, what the hell? How'd you get that image, right? If I show up super prepared and I ask you questions, you were going to be like, Molly is my number one. And you're going to throw me every bit of business that you possibly can because you like me. Yeah. And because I showed up and I was prepared. And then we talked about an industry that we have in common. And I showed you that I'm passionate and I'm intelligent and I'm experienced. You're going to throw me business all day long. And so that's how I want people to think about a branded podcast. This is a relationship builder, because then 2 months from now, you could say, Molly, I'm doing this summit. Can you come speak on a panel for me? I'm be like, hell yeah, Edward, I'm down for that. Right now we have a relationship. Now I'm thinking to myself, oh, I'm going to throw Edward some clients because I don't do what Edward does. Right. And vice versa. And that's the magic of a branded podcast. So if you spend $1,500 a month, you go into this super targeted. You know every bit of those 12, you know the 12 people you're going to interview and why. You have plenty of time to prepare, plenty of time to wow those people with a killer interview, and then you got a month's worth of content going out. If you don't think that 12 strategically placed and developed relationships with your ideal customer is not going to create an ROI, then I don't know what to tell you. You know, because you could go to tons of networking events and conferences. Are you at the end of the year walking away with 12 relationships? 12 people were like, Molly is the shit.
Yeah.
Are you getting 12 of those a year?
Yeah.
Right? What's your average client spend? What's your return? Okay, you spent $1,500 for the year. What is that? Like 18 grand or whatever. I'm not the best at math, right? 20 grand.
Yeah.
What's your average client spend? You know what I mean? If it's 15 grand, then that's a no brainer because you're going to get more than one client out of those 12 relationships.
Yeah. You know what? Like in my head, I was going through. I'm like, yeah, that's actually really huge because you can spend like with the Google. Like, let's say you want to do your business, whatever. You can spend 1,500 like in one day or one weekend is gone. But the way you're talking about this can to amplify this can be massive and be able to reach actually the really kind of target people that you need to do, and then for them also expose you to their network. And this is huge. Personal, I guess I wanted to say it's like almost like a personal relationship, not just network. Kind of like
Exactly.
like say, hey, I know Molly. If someone say, hey, can you connect? Like I have gotten those things too, like on LinkedIn, where a random person will be like, hey, nice meeting you. Can you connect me to so and so? And I'm like, I don't know who that person. And then I look at like we connected, but it's like it's just random connection that I had. But when you have this kind of interview, talking to the right people that you want to talk to, you're building this nice network so much. It's just so awesome.
But you have to be prepared. You got to be
Yeah.
prepared though. And I see this all the time. You know, the client and the guest show up. They don't know anything about each other. One of them's at Whole Foods. You're like, yo, man, you gotta show up, right? Because podcasting is intimate. And so you want to create a memorable experience for the person on the other side of the table and everybody listening, right? You've done a great job of that. Create, personal connection. I'm sure some people listen to my story, maybe laughed a little bit, hopefully, right? And so they're like, oh, she's relatable. This is interesting content, right? And so podcasting is intimate. You want to create a great experience. So if you're just cranking through people all the time, it's way less valuable than doing one really, really, really intentional interview and being crazy prepared. And also thinking about your ask, is there a summit you're booking? Do you want to have somebody on your board of advisors? Think big. If you're a carpet guy, why don't you go for like the apartment home directors who manage 400 apartments who have carpet versus one, right? You got to think bigger, right? And go outside the box. And chances are that person hasn't been interviewed all that much because it's not as appealing and sexy, right? But you show up and you're like, hey, Mary, you're a beast. You're done all this stuff. She's gonna be like, wow, no one ever pays attention to me. Thank you. Because there's a lot of unsung heroes in the industry that move major amounts of money. It's like the receptionist at the company is the one picking where they buy lunch all the time. So you better be nice to her because she's gonna move the needle in your revenue, man. You got to know who the person is. So podcasting is a great way to connect right to that person and create that relationship, but it's also about the runway. Make sure that 2 weeks before the podcast comes out, you say, hey, Molly, thanks for coming on my show. It's going to be live in 2 weeks. Here's 3 graphics. Here's one with your face on it and a quote from the episode. Oh, and by the way, I would love if you would be on my board of directors next week, right? Or, hey, it's coming out in 2 weeks. And then, hey, by the way, it's out. And tag them on LinkedIn and start the conversation. And when they comment, when they post it on their LinkedIn, go in and respond to the comments on the people posting on their posts. Like actually engage, nurture that relationship. And so it's always going to be like quantity or quality over quantity, right? And if you're going to do quantity, then it better be quality, right? There's no exchange for that, right? Quantity is not ever the answer, right? So targeted. So the short answer is we work with really big companies. We work with NATO. We work with companies with large budgets and attorneys and, stuff like that. And then we also work with smaller companies. We really love working with founders of companies that have just gotten funded, because they got invested because they told their personal story. But now they need to tell the world their personal story, and they need to market their new app, service, product, disruptive tech, whatever it is that they've just got all that money for. Now they need to go out and make sure that they're getting customers for that product. And they need to make sure they're telling the rest of the world, not just the investors, that story. So we love creating content that hits both of those needs. And then we create short form content. Half of it goes to the founder, the other half goes for the company, and we're hitting major targets at the same time. So that's who we really love working with, because a lot of times they need a website, they need branding, they need to go on other people's podcasts, to talk about their products. So we do executive booking for that. So that's kind of our, people are very clear on what kind of goals they want to accomplish this year are the people that we really love working with. And then we also have a lot of big project based, like we're working with like the, Nuclear Regulatory Commission, and they're doing 12 podcasts, and it's a one-time contract, and we may or may never see them again. But who we really like to work with is businesses and brands that have a 10-year game plan. I love people that got long-term goals. Those are the people I like working with.
Yeah. So with amplifying content, right? Like, so with the video, like video recorded production, so you have you kind of exposing to either LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, YouTube, but these networks or these platforms, they absorb information a little bit different, right? So like when you have LinkedIn, it's more professional kind of thing. Then you go into either TikTok or whatever is more, it's a different, how do you like, I guess maybe, do you produce content per platform depending on the platform where you want to amplify it?
Well, for sure. So like, take for example, this conversation, right? Like if I was going to chop this podcast up, I would take the funny moments, right? I would take the funny moments for TikTok. I'd do some short vertical videos where I said something that made you laugh or made a face. I would put the personality, right? Personality of me or you, depending on who we're trying to, I would take other short clips of where I sounded really smart and really, like I really know what I'm talking about. That was a good one. Cut it off before I say something stupid, right? I'm going to make a couple of those. Then I'm going to make a couple of you. With you sounding really smart and cliffhangers, not 30 seconds, not 45 seconds. Ain't nobody watching all that, right? Ain't nobody got time for that, for real. We want 10-second, 15-second or less videos that can just easily play again, right? Then we want a different video that maybe is 30 seconds for LinkedIn, but it's still cliffhangers and it's in a rectangular format. And then we need another video that's a square for Twitter. Right. And then now, as of like a week ago, Instagram said that all videos are reels. So if you put something in a reel, it's going to show up on the grid and then it's going to cut it off. And so you better make sure that there's no point in even putting square videos on Instagram anymore, because what they're going to do is show them in reels and they're going to look like crap. Yeah. So now you got to make all your videos vertical. And not only that, but when they get cut off in a square, everything better be in there so it doesn't mess up your grid. So yes, we're staying on top of everything. And so from one interview, we would take different pieces of this to serve different purposes, right? Like I would probably clip the part when I was like $1,500 a month, gets you in front of a ton of people. We do all the marketing. I'll even give you the strategy. All you got to do is show up. That's the type of clip I would cut to put on my LinkedIn, because I'm trying to attract people to that offer to work with me, right? So every clip would have a different purpose. And if you're looking at a bigger picture and you're committed to expanding your network with 12 fruitful relationships that will lead to multiple clients, then, you can be really, really intentional about all of that. And you can take 8-10-second videos from 1 hour long conversation very easily and fill all those buckets with content that makes sense. And so it's not about doing more. It's about smarter, not harder, right? It's one of my faves, one of my top 5, smarter, not harder. Gary Vee talks about making 100 pieces of content a day, and I think people will hate you. I think if I put 100 pieces of my face on the internet every day, people will be like, okay, Gary Vee,
Yeah,
calm down, right? And they should, it would be annoying. And the cost on that's not real. We're not Gary V. I don't make 100 million a year. I don't have 80 grand a year or 160 grand a year to blow on content creation. I just don't,
yeah, yeah.
And so this is a great way to get it done. You know what I mean? Under $1,000, you go on a podcast, you send us the link, we cut up, we give you 8 videos back. You put this on, founder goes on a podcast. 3 of the clips are about his personality. The other 3 are about the company. They give it to the marketing team. They're like, yes, thank you. Content, right? And then they disseminate it the way it needs to happen. So that's who we want to work with, is people who have like, I'm giving this 3 years. I want to make consistent content for a year. I want to do this podcast. I want to measure the results. If you're looking to start a podcast because your business coach told you to, but you're not sure what to talk about and you don't really have a ton of money, like, don't start a podcast. It's like business coaches told everybody to start a community on Facebook, which is hella disrespectful to actual communities in the world. But it's like, no, you're just putting people in a group so you can sell to them later, right?
Yeah.
And every business coach told everybody to do that. But that's not necessarily creating value, right? And it takes a lot of work. Like, you don't just create a group and put people in them and then shout offers at them. You have to nurture them and create a community, right? So podcasting is the same thing. It's expensive. You got to put effort into it, and so, if you're just doing it to check a box, don't do it, because you won't last. And what'll happen is you're going to spend 12 weeks creating something. You're not going to get more than 5 episodes out. And then you're going to be like 4 months behind. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You could have done something else. You just wasted a whole quarter on something that yielded no results, which happens in the blink of an eye. And we all know, because we've all been there.
Molly, thank you so much. This is so much awesome information. There's so much value added to this. Do you want to maybe just kind of summarize? Let's do it again. Like, I always like to do this, like where you do like an elevator pitch again. Can you explain a little bit in short what you do and how people can find you?
That's right. Well, Heartcast Media, we are a digital content agency that creates strategic relationships and drive revenue through your content. You can find us at heartcastmedia.com. We just actually launched a brand new website earlier this week. Lots of videos, so let it load for a second. Don't be like, I waited a half a second and nothing happened. You got to just chill and just let it happen. But you can send a request link through there. We're on Instagram. We're on, everywhere you go. You put in Heartcast, like podcast, but Heart, HeartCast media. And of course, you can also find me here on LinkedIn. We're live there, I believe. And so if people want to connect with me here, and then mollyruland.com if anybody wants personal business consultancy for smaller businesses that don't have a huge budget. I do that on the side as well, just because I really enjoy working with smaller businesses and helping them make more money.
That's so awesome. Heartcastmedia.com. Actually, I pulled up their website. It's so nice. It's really
Thank
awesome
you.
website. It was like, that's good. Molly, thank you so much again for spending time with me and just kind of bringing value to listen and stuff. And I appreciate again. Thank you guys for listening to the headliners. With Molly Ruland.
Close enough, man. Close enough.
Thank you again. Just give me a second.